All right, I'm here today to paint the top sides of this 38-foot friendship sloop. Now, it belongs to my friend Matthew here. He and I are going to do the job together, just like that. We're going to use the rolling and tipping method, what we feel is just the fastest and easiest way to get the job accomplished. And we are going to be working side by side. I'm going to be doing the rolling, and Matthew's going to be doing the tipping. Now, we're going to use a foam roller because with polyurethane paint, less is more, and the foam roller controls the amount of paint that we're going to put on much easier than a napped roller. We're actually going to use wet edge topside paint. Now, it's a polyurethane single pot paint, and it has advanced UV stabilizers. We expect the job to come out very easily and fast and with a very small amount of effort. This is the brush that we're going to use to tip it with after we roll it, and we've got it wrapped up in some tin foil. We've actually put a little bit of penetrol in the brush and stored it so that it would stay nice and soft for us. Either blue or green masking tape can be used along the waterline. Here we're using blue tape. Fine line tapes can be used for cove stripes and purposes like that. And you just want to remember to stir this paint very, very well. You don't want to leave any sediment in the bottom of the can. And remember to also use a separate paint pot for doing your touch-up or your thinning in, because you don't want to leave the top off your paint can for any length of time, because you'll lose your thinners off into the atmosphere. And some of the things about this is you got to go fast because you got to keep a nice wet edge. And the rolling and tipping method does the trick. We're starting to paint the boat on the starboard side, and the reason why we're doing that is because it's a very bright sunny day, warm, and we don't want this boat to heat up so much that it dries the paint too rapidly. We have to work very rapidly when we have to work together as a team. And I'm going to be rolling the paint on, and I have to be able to roll this paint out as thin as possible because you just can't put too much paint on. The tipping won't spread the paint out or thin it. It only smooths it. So it's not the tipper's job to get the right amount of paint on. That's up to me as I roll it. So I roll and use quite a bit of pressure on the roller, and then I'll move over and roll it out a little bit on the dry spot, and then move back maybe and roll over what I've already done to try to pick up any excess paint that might have been laying there before he starts to tip it. Now, the tipping obviously has to be accomplished just as fast as the rolling does. And as long as we work in unison together, it's going to come out looking really, really nicely. All right, I've got some paint on the roller here, and I've rolled it back and forth on that sloped end of the pan quite a bit so that I could squeeze out some of the excess. Because the last thing in the world you want to do is to apply too much paint. It'll just be running all over the place, causing all kinds of problems. Now, this is right out of the can. No thinning. Now, I've got the paint applied in there, but you see I'm going to roll over it again because I want to pick up any of the excess and then spread it out a little bit over in this area. That way, I can control how much I get on there. And that's working out pretty well. So Matthew's going to tip it a little bit. And I like it when the tipper is on my left side. So if he's right-handed, then we don't get in each other's way so much. Back to the pan. Here we go. Wet edge can be brushed, rolled, or sprayed on fiberglass, wood, or steel anywhere above the waterline, and thinning for brushing or rolling is accomplished with mineral spirits up to 5 to 10%, and for spraying you use xylene up to 5 to 10%. So I'm getting some paint onto the roller right now, and I'm rolling it back and forth quite a bit on this sloped end of the pan because I don't want there to be too much paint on the roller. If you get too much paint on the roller, you're going to get too much paint on the boat, and that isn't going to work for us. So you've got to be very careful about how much paint is on that roller when you first put the roller up on the boat. Paint has a funny habit of drying, and although we want it to dry, we don't want it to dry right now. The paint's going on a whole lot easier than it did on the starboard side because the starboard side was exposed to the sunlight, and it's quite hot. So it's drying on us fairly rapidly, and we're having to roll and tip it much faster on the starboard side than we did on the port side. The port side's much easier. We're able to roll the paint out in front of us quite a bit further and make the tipping strokes a lot longer, and it just makes the job go faster and easier. We've basically completed the entire port and starboard side at this point, and Matthew's on the transom just painting around the lettering. I removed the blue tape along the water line, and it doesn't seem to need much of a touch up there, and we're getting a good look at what we've done here. This paint just rolled out really nicely, tipped out very nicely, covered really well, and we don't have runs. Looks fantastic. Wasn't that much effort. When you work together like we did, it happens pretty quickly. And one other thing to keep in mind when you're painting a boat like this in a boatyard, if you put the boat north and south in the boatyard, then in the morning, one side of the boat's going to be in the shade, and in the afternoon, the other side's going to be in the shade, and it's going to make it a lot easier to paint, because the port side of this boat in the shade was a lot easier to paint than the starboard side was. Even though we got away with it, that's a great recommendation. So the job's complete, and we're going to do a little work on deck, get the boat overboard, and Matthew and I are going to have a great summer sailing this boat.